Hi, future Andy here, potentially I suppose. This is quite an old video now, probably best part of 2 years, but I actually completely forgot that I'd made it, so I've put it together. It used to be in 3 parts, it's now in 1 part. There's a little bit with the language that maybe I would have changed if I was to remake it, but for the most part all the points remain, which is why I've kind of enhanced it and re-releasing it. I've tried to make it a little bit more sarcastic and humorous than some of my usual videos, so hopefully you enjoy it.
The definition of religion that I came up with by examining all the different things that are universally accepted as religion by both their adherents and their critics are a doctrine of ritual traditions, ceremonies, mythology, and associated dogma of a faith-based belief system which posits a posthumous promise that some element of self, be it a soul or consciousness or memories, etc., may in some sense continue beyond the death of a physical being. Now, this applies to every religion that is universally accepted.
If everyone would be happy and agreeable that I used that as a working definition, I could end the video right here, because clearly veganism doesn't tick any of those boxes.
I would just like to quickly add too that when I made this video, I was working from the current Vegan Society definition the whole way through, both sort of subjects. If I was to bring in the potential interpretation of the definition that I now use on a regular basis, there'd be no point making these videos, because the definition is so incompatible with those versions of it. You can kind of stretch it to some degree if you use the one that's on the Vegan Society website right now, but using any of the older ones or using the interpretation that I use, it's not even worth having a conversation about.
But I'll go through the other potential definitions that are available online so that we can literally nip this in the bud, hopefully. So as you can see, besides some subtle differences and a few variations in the wording, essentially the core ethics for most of them are the same. So if we were to transfer that criteria into some sort of chart that we could then run through one by one, I think that's the fairest way to move forward. So if I'm going to challenge the assertion that veganism is a religion, this is probably as much of a working definition as we're going to get. There's the 9 different characteristics which are kind of spread out through the various ones that we found. So we'll go through each one individually, and if veganism ticks, 3 or 4 of the boxes, I don't think it should have to tick the whole list, then I'll concede that I'm wrong and veganism is a religion. No point giving this any more time than it deserves. That's a big fat no. Again, that's a big fat no. Veganism doesn't have any sacred objects whatsoever, unless you class life, and if we class life as sacred, I'm pretty sure that you would too, even if that was your own, so no. And so that makes it 0 out of 3. Another no. There's no sacred objects, so there's no ritual that could involve them, but there's no ritual of any kind, of any description. Obviously veganism and morality go hand in hand, but there's no sacred tie to that, no supernatural, no spiritual tie. You could look at it as just common law. It's the fundamental difference of knowing between right and wrong, not causing anyone any harm or loss, and that extends to other beings. So even if you personally don't care about animals, you wouldn't want any of the things that happen to them in these various industries to happen to you. So
here's what I understand the terms morally right and morally wrong to mean. A particular action or choice is moral or right when it somehow promotes happiness, well-being, or health, or it somehow minimizes unnecessary harm or suffering, or it does both. A particular action or choice is immoral or wrong when it somehow diminishes happiness, well-being, or health, or it somehow causes unnecessary harm or suffering, or again, it does both. And notice that nothing about this is not a personal opinion that's only true for me. Harm, pain, suffering, health, well-being, these are real things. They're not contingent on my mind. I don't have to agree that you're dying for you to actually be dying.
So it's not even up for debate, is it? Again, no, all of the feelings that are associated with veganism are all natural human emotions and feelings that most people feel, even if they're only about themselves. Do I even need to bother answering this one? No. No, again, we're all victims of our own environment, and these are human behaviours. All we're doing and offering is a different type, one that everybody knows how to do. It's empathy, it's compassion, it's respect. Everyone knows how to do it, they just restrict who and where they show it. That's the issue. if we were to concede that this was a tick for us, then you would also have to concede that it's a tick for you. Even if you don't care about animals, every time you leave your house, you respect the rules, the laws, the boundaries. You have your own moral compass. It's just how far that extends, which is the issue. Because it's speciesism which is the problem. It's not that nobody has any morals, is it? It's not that nobody has any empathy or compassion. They do. It's just where that's pushed out and where that's directed that needs to change. And obviously by default, because none of the above, this is a no too. So I would say that after seeing all of that, I'm somewhat unconvinced that I belong to a religion. I'm somewhat unconvinced that veganism falls into any of those categories that make a religion. And so I don't know why people keep repeating this. It seems from the gist of what they think a religion is that they're actually saying that veganism falls into a cult, which I'll look at next and we'll go through that. But as it stands, is veganism a religion? Is it fuck? Not unless not committing crimes is a religion, not unless not being a shitty person is a religion, not unless just acting in a normal way without causing any harm to anyone else or anything else is a religion. No.
Usually when people think about cults, what they think about is some kind of closed community that is usually dominated by some megalomaniac who controls everyone's minds. Here are 3 important things to understand about a cult. Number 1, just because it's a cult doesn't mean it's evil or insidious. Many cults bring people together for good. Number 2, there really isn't that much of a difference between a religion and a cult. A lot of the greatest religions, most successful religions in the world began as cults. And number 3, cults are as cults do. If it works towards good in the world, then it's fine. If it works towards evil in the world, then it's a problem.
Now, just before I move forward, I wanted to remind you again of that last point because it's vital and I think that it shouldn't be forgotten.
If it works towards good in the world, then it's fine. If it works towards evil in the world, then it's a problem.
Today, there are thousands of cults around the world. It's important to note 2 things about them. First, not all cults are religious. Some are political, therapy-based, focused on self-improvement, or otherwise. Broadly speaking, a cult is a group or movement with a shared commitment to a usually extreme ideology that's typically embodied in a charismatic leader. Most cults share some basic characteristics. A typical cult requires a high level of commitment from its members and maintains a strict hierarchy, separating unsuspecting supporters and recruits from the inner workings. It claims to provide answers to life's biggest questions through its doctrine, along with the required recipe for change that shapes a new member into a true believer. And most importantly, it uses both formal and informal systems of influence and control to keep members obedient, with little tolerance for internal disagreement or external scrutiny. Many religions began as cults, but integrated into the fabric of the larger society as they grew. A modern cult, by contrast, separates its members from others. Rather than providing guidelines for members to live better lives, a cult seeks to directly control them, from personal and family relationships to financial assets and living arrangements. Cults also demand obedience to human leaders, who tend to be highly persuasive people with authoritarian and narcissistic streaks, motivated by money, sex, power, or all 3.
So hopefully you've got a pretty good idea now of what a cult is and what the characteristics are that define it, and through the various interpretations, what most people define a cult as. So same as we did with the religion one, let's put them into a table and go from there. And this is essentially that list. I have summarised a little bit and I'll elaborate when I go through each point. This is a very simple no. Most vegans are at the point that they're at as a result of their critical thinking, not because they haven't used it. It's the other way around, I'm afraid. There's actually nothing stopping you leaving at any time. There's not actually a club that you join or anything like that, so to speak. It's just the fact that if you went back to eating animals, then obviously you'd be no longer welcome in the vegan club, if that's what you want to refer to it as. However, I've never met anyone who went vegan for the animals, i.e. had their eyes opened and their conscience shifted, shall we say, who then went back to doing it. I don't know anyone who morally realised that this was wrong and then said, yeah, you know what, who cares? Nobody. So yeah, anyone is free to leave at any time if that's how you want to look at it. You just wouldn't be vegan anymore in the same way that you wouldn't be a non-smoker if you went back to smoking, or you wouldn't be sober if you went back to drinking. So I think this might be one of the ones that people try and equivocate or change or redefine so that it kind of molds to veganism. However, to sort of set the record straight very clearly, you don't even have to know what veganism is to contribute to this. Just being a decent human being and not wanting to cause any harm or loss or damage or suffering to any other being is all you have to do. There's no exclusivity. You don't have to go on Facebook or any other platform and start posting things. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. So no, again. So whilst this isolation is definitely something I'm not going to ignore because I have even experienced it myself in my own family, it's not a result of anyone trying to expose the group or trying to pull you away from a cult. It's to do with the fact that you make your family sort of feel guilty about the fact that they haven't made the same choices that you have. You're kind of like living proof now that they're not doing enough. It does make things very difficult and very awkward, but they're not ostracized. It's them that are ostracizing us for the most part. It's them that make us feel uncomfortable or make us have to justify or explain our choices all the time. So this does happen. However, it's not us excluding you. It definitely is the other way around, I'm afraid. I've never heard of any sexual exploitation within the vegan community. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I have been made aware of financial irregularities within the vegan community and have been part of people that have exposed those, whether it's a belief system or whether it's a way of life or whether it's just a club that you go to on the weekend. Anyone is vulnerable to being financially exploited. That's just a state of society, I'm afraid. There's certainly no aspects that I'm aware of, or if I was aware of them, or if you know of someone would like to make me aware, then as a fellow vegan I'd be more than happy to call those out. As far as I'm aware, there certainly isn't any element of veganism that could be used to exploit people financially, unless it was donations to an activist or to a charity or a sanctuary or something like that which were misappropriated, in which case I would expect them to be exposed and held accountable just like anyone else.
And just to quickly finish off, this is why when you call us hypocrites, for example, because of all the insects and animals that are killed in the growth of plants, we obviously don't want or support that. It's obviously not what we choose. It's just the way that things are, sadly. Obviously, if there was a mental shift and far more people turned into a plant-based lifestyle, then all of those markets and all of that sort of engineering and expertise and skill that's gone into creating horrendous machines that destroy life as efficiently as possible will move in the direction of trying to actually conserve it and keep it alive for the first time ever. If everyone moves into a vegan lifestyle, then they have a vegan mentality.
Who are you?
Who's your leader?
Yet again, it would be the opposite of this. If anything, we've pulled away from the lies and the deception. That's what kept us in this closed shell where we used to believe in the old-fashioned food pyramid. That's the lies and deception that we've broken away from, or that animals don't feel pain, or that they're killed humanely, or that all of this is the circle of life, or that it's natural, or that it's normal, or that it's right. Nah. Those are all lies. That's all deception, and we've broken free from it, and hopefully one day you all will too. For anyone not interested in listening to a mini rant about religion, feel free to end the video now. Obviously that last one is also a no, and it's conclusive again, 0%. Thank you very much for listening. If you are interested, then stay tuned. So the main reason that I'm even doing this is because both of these subjects that I'm going to raise annoy me for various reasons, but they're both things that I haven't really ever had a chance to address in any other video or during any other subject, so that's the only reason that I'm doing it. But the first one is, and this isn't just a stab at Christianity, although it's the one I know the most about, how all of these religious scriptures and books are used to justify the actions of how people treat and exploit and consume animals, despite the fact that I personally, for example, I could cite just as much scripture in the Bible which tells you to be the animal's protector and defender and make sure that they're looked after and they don't come to any harm, as you could cite me that it's used for food. Most of the translations for things like meat, for example, never meant meat of an animal, never meant flesh. They meant the meat of a nut. They meant the extent, the sustenance of it. We're talking about people that didn't have a brilliant understanding of the world around them. They were very ignorant, primitive men that basically wrote a book to the best of their abilities to sell a narrative and a version of events that they wanted people to believe. Most of the stories that are in those books are taken from much older books. They are changed, and the names are changed, and the dates are changed, and they're made to relate to those times. However, they're not real. So of course this information isn't going to match. These people had very different ideas of how the world existed around them. Not knocking them, no, we're talking a good few thousand years ago. People didn't have access to the information, so they believed everything that was in these books. We now know better than that. That's the point I'm trying to make. If you were trying to use any one of these books, and it extends to all of them, as your moral compass or how you derive what is right and wrong, you would be a criminal in every country in the world. But basically the point is, it doesn't matter whether all the contradictions in those various books didn't exist. It doesn't matter if all the information in all of them could be 100% verified and corroborated and it was all true. It still wouldn't make it right. It still wouldn't make it morally just. It still wouldn't make the fact that we know better wrong. It still wouldn't change any of that. It wouldn't change the fact that we've moved on and we've evolved and we don't act in that barbaric way anymore. Also, just on this note, how come you completely ignore the commandment thou shalt not kill, by the way, as it doesn't say thou shalt not kill people, not that you're paying any attention to that, but it says thou shalt not kill, full stop. Just saying.